we go.
Welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast, where Dave is slightly grumpy, running on steam, and didn't get much sleep. It's the first time that's ever happened. Dave's office also reorganized.
Oh, actually, I see desk space. That's new, right?
Right.
I just swapped desks. Yeah.
One of these days is going to be comfortable. I just know.
Do you spend more time arranging or writing?
Fuck you.
No, I'm curious. I'm not insulting
This was absolute. This didn't take any time at all.
Did you finish Nano?
No. The desk needs to be right in order for me to write. All right, shut up.
Dave puts the no in Nano every year.
No.
I squeaked in. I got just over 50,000. I was like, this is going to just be so easy. And no.
You were like way ahead. What happened?
Well, no.
Writing something really hard.
2,000 in like the first week.
Well, no, because, so you were watching my progress or whatever?
Of course I was.
Well, no, because I don't write on weekends, so it surges, right? So it'll go. I'll get ahead, and then I spend 2 days at equal, and then I'm writing a really hard project right now. I've been working on it for like 3 weeks, 3 months, and when we do these updates for the Stone Table on what we've been doing every 3 weeks, and every time I've had to do it, I'm like, still working on that same book. It's great.
Yeah, I did the opposite. I literally pulled something off the story starter shelf that just matched me. It was a writer that had a 15-year-old daughter, and the writer and I don't have very much in common, but it was still relatively simple, and the beats were really straightforward. So Johnny, who's our powerhouse draft guy, is like, man, why just give me the hardest thing in the universe for this book? And I beat Nano with time to spare.
Yeah,
it was
nice, but it's at 100,000 words right now, and I'm like, maybe I can get it done in another 50,000. I hope. Like, it just keeps going and going. It's really complicated.
But I'm super, super excited to read it. So, which I told Johnny today, and he said maybe next year.
I said hopefully I finish it. Anyway, so today our book is going to be Drew the Book Narrator. If I had my notes ready, which I will in a second, but I don't right now, I would know his last name. But it's
Drew Donaldson.
Drew Donaldson. There you go. Dave's on top of it. And
he has a narration company called Book Narrator.
Yes, Book Narrator. And judging by his
.co.uk.
Right, which that's what I was just going to say is that's obviously
he's. You want to hear about their new and innovative ways to promote writers' work through list building, podcasts, and audio promotions?
Probably. All right, something cool. So I'll go first because a part of me is worried that Sean is going to steal mine. So I'm going to go ahead and get it out there first, and then if I'm right...
Wait.
No, silence him.
Wait. Yeah, what are you talking about? I feel like we're on dangerous territory.
No, we're not in dangerous territory at all. It just seems like the sort of thing that you may have run into. I could be totally wrong. So it's a movie.
Okay, you're good.
I figured I was fine, but I don't know. You and Cindy go see movies all the time.
Wait, no, is it the movie?
We went to see The Disaster Artist.
Oh, yeah, have at it.
Yeah. What is the movie?
That looked amazing.
Yeah. So the and what's funny about The Disaster Artist is if you haven't heard of this movie or know what the hell it's about, it's James.
You wouldn't be alone.
James and Dave Franco, and it's about the if you've heard of the
only would be worse than Birdemic, and by
the
worse
Room, which is but it's the thing about The Room is it's terrible. But it's terrible on a good budget. Like the budget is estimated to have been like $6 million, which he financed himself, and nobody knows where his money comes from.
Well, his salary was $5.95 million.
No, but it's just all. It's just like Birdemic is terrible in part because it's just. I mean, obviously the guy is deluded, but he obviously had no budget.
Both auteurs are deluded, right?
Yes, clearly deluded. But this movie, like, it looks like a real movie. The sound isn't all fucked up, but it's just terrible. The movie's called The Room. And Sean...
Yeah, they've got midnight showings of it in LA.
Yeah, Sean mentioned this to us after we watched Birdemic and was like, you got to watch The Room. So I never watched it, but when Sean and I went to see... what did we see? I don't remember what it was. Something recently... Blade Runner, and we were walking past there was a poster for it, and he goes, oh, this is about The Room, and I just remembered it. And so Robin and I got a date night, and we were like, well, is there
You dragged her to see that?
She thought it was awesome. It was hilarious. It's not, again, Disaster Artist is the movie about.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So it's really funny, but is
James Franco just amazing as that guy?
He's exactly like him. At the end, they did a side-by-side.
Does he do that like raw way of talking?
They did a side-by-side thing with two. Yeah, he does. Where they showed the original.
That's so awesome.
And then they showed the James Franco one, like literally side-by-side. And while they're playing, the audio it's perfect. Like it's a perfect recreation of the movie. And the thing that made it extra kind of cool, and this was my first kind of Austin movie experience that had this element, is the guy who, have you seen the Room, Sean? I know you have.
No, just I know it's legendary and it's on my list.
Okay, so the guy who plays Mark, it's about a guy named, like Tommy plays a guy named Johnny, appropriately, and Mark is his friend, and there's just these wonderful scenes between them. And the guy who played Mark wrote a book called The Disaster Artist, which this movie is based on. And he was there. So like they did a Q&A instead of previews with the audience at the Allen. And it was really fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really, really cool. Well, My Something Cool is a movie also, but it's Coco.
We're going to go see that next week.
It's so good. It's so good. It's already it's Pixar in top form. It's so awesome to see them back, and it's not just because I used to be Mexican that I like this movie so much. Like,
I remember that.
It's really, really good. It is just Pixar at their emotional core, like they're at their best. And if you get to see it this weekend, then you're luckier than me, because you get to see it without the really terrible commercial for Frozen, which is so terrible that Disney has pulled it. Have you guys heard about this?
They did? Oh, I wanted to see it just to see how bad it was.
It sucks. It's just on YouTube. What the hell am I watching? So you go to a Pixar movie and you're kind of guaranteed a Pixar short, right? That's part of the deal. I've seen every single Pixar movie. I've seen 18 Pixar shorts for 18 movies. So I go to this one, and instead of the 4 to 6 minute Pixar short that is going to leave me all touched and delighted, there's this 22-minute commercial for Frozen. Why 22 minutes? Because it was made for TV.
Are you talking about the movie that was out years ago, a commercial for the movie Frozen?
Well, they're persuading us because Frozen 2 is coming up this summer.
I see.
Wait, that was 20 minutes?
It was 22 minutes, yes.
They could have showed that Blood on the Asphalt driver's education movie in that time.
You're right. They could have. But instead, it was Olaf taking us on an adventure of misery. Like, it was just boring and stupid. And I'm like, oh my God, how long is 22 minutes? Is a long-ass time with the lulls that are meant for commercials. So anyway, major cheers to the Frozen commercial, but cheers to Coco, which was awesome.
Okay, My Something Cool will be quick. It's a Tribe of Mentors book by Timothy Ferriss, now no longer Tim Ferriss. It's similar to the 8 Questions podcast we used to do, that he asked a whole bunch of people the same questions. The disappointment, however, is that like the people that I wanted to, because I thought it was, he gave the same questions to everybody and printed all the answers. No, he picks a few answers from each person. And I was highly disappointed in like some of the people I wanted to read their responses to one question, which was not included. So
did you tell him to fuck off on Twitter yet?
Well, it's a $17 book. I expected more, but whatever.
You should tell him that on Twitter.
Wait, that's your something cool? Something, and you're
complaining. It's a good book otherwise.
It's mediocre.
Well, I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed. I was expecting specific answers from specific people that were not there.
Did you read Tools of Titans?
Yes, I did. I like that.
Did you like that? What's better, this or Tools of Titans?
I haven't finished this yet. So probably Tools of Titans, just for the thoroughness and the fact that you're not skimping on the answers I want.
He's Timothy Ferriss now, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd like you guys to call me Jonathan Truant.
I'm going to be Jonathan. Actually, I think I should rock a harder name, because Sean there's no way to like give that
abbreviate or make it longer.
Yeah, I want a Jonathan.
All right. So let's at this point get to our guest, who has been waiting silently in the wings here while we go through our
rocking the red wine. Good call, man.
Can you hear me okay, first of all?
Yes.
Yes, you can. No, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not actually red wine, it's port, because we're getting to that time of year where my wife actually brings home Christmas drinks from the supermarket. So that's all good.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
it kind of makes me want to go get some port.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
carry on.
Welcome to the show, Drew. Drew Donaldson is a self-publishing author. He runs an audiobook narration company called Book Narrator. And your description was it aims to link writers with some of the best narrators in the business. And you want to use audio in new, innovative ways for promoting writers' work through list building, podcasts, and audio promotions, which of course are things that we would agree with. So first of all, welcome to the show. It's
Thank you.
good to have you on. And I will say that your accent is going to excite Dave.
No, it's going to. You mean it already has. Hand check, Dave.
I listened into
harass our guests.
I listened into your podcast with Mark Dawson, and I noted the attraction of his accent. So,
Oh yeah, it makes Dave all sweaty. You should. Well, you can't see him.
Okay, I don't want to be brought up on ethics charges, so let's not harass our guests. All right.
Right, there you go. Dave's going to be the latest one in the magazines.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how to cope with a sweaty host. So let's just.
Everybody's going to say, Dave, I never saw it coming. Wait, hold on.
He gets all purple and veiny about that halfway mark.
All right. So
professional.
thanks for being on. Thanks for being on, Drew. So let's, one of I guess the first question I had for you, I looked through the material that you sent us and I looked through the site, and I just want to understand it from a 30,000 foot perspective. And is it basically an alternative to ACX, like an audiobook narration production upload, and how does it compare to the other players in the space, and what makes you different?
It's something that runs alongside ACX in as much as I'm offering production service. I'm not actually offering a platform on which you can release an audiobook. I guess the angle that I'm coming at is more from, I think ACX is a great platform for indie authors to get onto. I think it can also be quite an expensive platform for indie authors to get onto. The good thing about ACX is that it's kind of opened up the possibility of authors linking up with narrators who are prepared to enter into that agreement for a share of the profit. But what that does mean is that there's quite a lot of poor quality narrators out there. And I think that if you're paying for people who are proper top voice talent, it can be more difficult for indie authors to link up with those people and to get something that's affordable. So really, I was looking at ways of how indie authors could maybe use audio in different ways than necessarily just releasing audiobooks. So shorter format stuff like, short stories, flash fiction. But if you are a novelist, considering just getting a section of your book narrated, which can then be used in lots of different ways. You can sort of use that as a promotion when you're launching your book. So I know that a lot of people have mailing lists and would maybe send out free books, for example. I think that a good alternative to that is some people don't want to necessarily give away a whole book. You can give away sort of an audio section of your book, and that can act as a nice lead into people getting interested in the rest of your work.
So does it work something like this? If I wanted to, so let's step outside Book Narrator for a second, kind of set the ground. So if I wanted to just do ACX, kind of, I would either basically have the option of I could get my audio files together and upload them. I could work with a narrator, in which case they would be uploading them, and then I would have to quality check them and all that sort of thing. And this is basically what you're doing for production is basically, we would work with both Book Narrator, get set up with a narrator, and then you'd handle the full production, which then those audio files would be uploaded to ACX as if we had just recorded them myself.
That's right. Yes. So basically, a book narrator is sort of like a middleman between indie writers, authors, and narrators. So I've specifically gone out of my way to sort of get together a stable of voices that I think would work well with indie writers specifically, who are sort of sympathetic to what they're trying to do, so that if a writer comes to me I can sort of link them up with somebody that I think will suit their style of writing. Now, I'd also like to point out that I sort of come from a writing background myself, in as much as I did a degree in English. I've also got an MA in creative writing, and I'm a self-published writer myself. So I'd like to think that I sort of have an understanding of where the writer would be coming from and can take their perspective on things.
So where's the difference between if I were to be on ACX and do this search thing and find a narrator to work with, so how does it differ from that? Like I could find a narrator, because you said some are really, there's some quality problems sometimes, and people have to find the right narrator, and we would be paying you and working with you, and you would have sort of a curated stable of just like the higher quality ones that you've curated out of the masses.
Yes, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I guess what I'm trying to add value on top of that, in as much as I want the audio I create not just to be used as an audiobook, but to be used for promotional purposes for the author as well. So, for example, if you've published a whole audiobook, if we've created a whole audiobook for you, we can then take sample chapters, we can add sort of embed music in the background, we can add intro and outro music, we can add special effects, and create something that then can be used. You can embed it on your website, or we create promotions for YouTube and for SoundCloud, which incorporate your book's artwork. The YouTube promotion would sort of incorporate a sound visualizer, so there'd be like a waveform in front of the artwork of your book. So you've got things that you can share on Facebook, you can share on Twitter. So I'd like to think it's more than just the audiobook experience. It's trying to add value to that and find ways that indie authors can get out there and sort of promote their work in slightly different ways, maybe.
Do you do that, the sound bed and effects throughout a book, or just when you're doing these sample chapters to share?
That's entirely up to the client. I would say that ACX, Audible have sort of guidelines on how much special effects and music you can use. That they actually limit it quite a lot. But what you can do is, as discussed, you can just take a sample chapter, or even if you didn't have the budget to have your whole book narrated, you could just have a chapter narrated with the effects, with the sound bedding in the background, and it helps create a nice sort of immersive experience, which is hopefully adding value to potential readers and clients. What's the experience of finding a narrator? Because you mentioned that's sort of one of the things that you're helping people to do, is to find the right narrator. So do you have like a database that people search through? Do they just, how big is the clutch of narrators that you have, that sort of thing? Well, basically, when I was setting this up, I spent days. It certainly felt like days. I was basically just sat in front of the ACX website, going through narrators, trying to find ones that I thought would match with what I wanted to achieve. I then sort of engaged in email dialogue with them. I needed to build up a sort of a database of a variety of accents, obviously male, female, American, English, people who were versatile and could do Irish, Spanish, other accents as well, because obviously you're going to get clients coming from all sorts of different backgrounds with all sorts of different characters. So yeah, I've kind of built up what I think is a good hardcore of narrators who are very versatile. And I'm always on the lookout trying to add more.
How big is that stable now?
I think I've got about 25, 30 voices, something like that. Do
you think that's enough to kind of hit every genre and every style?
I'm trying to be open-minded about that, in as much as if somebody comes to me with something that I don't think I can match, because of my experience now of sort of dealing with the ACX interface and kind of being able to filter down through that quite well. I'm sort of offering, if I haven't got anything that I think will fit, I'll go out and find that for you instead.
What are your best tips for choosing a narrator? What sorts of things should you be looking for?
Definitely you need to check their track record. If you go onto ACX, always sort of listen to their sound samples. if you do that for any length of time, you'll immediately hear that there's some people who you can hear all the background noise. You can hear the washing machine going. You
Sean's
can hear
dog barking.
Exactly. Yeah. All that sort of thing. The trash being taken out, people arguing in the background, you name it. So obviously you want to avoid anybody who's got that sort of thing going on. I mean, the thing is, I think it's a bit like when digital photography came out, that sort of leveled the playing field where suddenly everybody became a photographer. But obviously not everyone could take good photos. And you can actually get sort of a fairly decent microphone and some audio equipment reasonably cheaply these days. So obviously that's kind of leveled the playing field in some ways, which is great. Anybody can have a go, but it does also mean that obviously a lot of people are kind of getting involved who don't necessarily offer a very good service. And even if you've got a great microphone, obviously if there's a dog barking in the background, that's no good. You need to make sure that whoever you're dealing with has a soundproof room that they can work from. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. The other thing I would look out for is, I think it's, certainly something that I've always been quite keen on, is making sure that narrator has their own website separate to ACX that you can go and check out their back catalogue of books they've produced, that sort of thing. They would be the two main things.
What about style? So we found that in some cases, this is something we've talked to a few people about in the audio business, is a person can be a great narrator, but they might not be a great fit for a book. It's kind of like, they're great actors, but certain people are better for certain roles.
Right. We found that working with Podium, casting was the most important thing. And it's what we failed at wholesale when trying to do it ourselves. And what my worry would be with a smaller stable of narrators to choose from, how do you find that perfect match with, okay, here's the tone and genre of my book, where, like, if you're looking through the whole world of narrators, you have thousands. So this is a little, to me, like the old studio system in Hollywood, right? Where they only had these actors could work for these films, and, movies got a lot better when they opened it out, and a director could cast, from the world instead of from a studio. So how much does that casting come into play, and how many books come through where you say, okay, that's not a fit, and what are the mechanisms to place that person with the right narrator? Because that is a place where authors feel lost.
Right.
Sure. That's a really good question. I would like to think, because of my background writing myself, that I have a natural empathy with what a writer wants. So really, I think the important thing for that would be creating a dialogue between myself and the writer to make sure that I understand the genre, understand the character, where they're coming from. And all of that would have to go on in the background before I even sort of approach narrators that I thought would be suitable for the role. It's wasting my own time, obviously, if I don't have that initial dialogue where I'm getting to know the author and getting to understand their book. Because obviously it's no good for me to try and match you up with people who aren't going to do the book justice. I would also, if I wasn't sure about whether a narrator matched up to the style of book or to the character, I would get them to record a sample first for the client to listen to. Because obviously, if you're engaging in recording a full audio book, it's a very long process, and you want to make sure that the client's on board and fully has 100% confidence in the narrator before you commit to sort of recording 9 hours of audio, which actually takes a lot longer than 9 hours, of course, because you're looking at like 4 or 5 hours per hour of finished audio. So to get the full audio book done can take 45, 50 hours of an hour sort of thing.
So how does this process typically work when someone's going to hire you guys? And what are the typical costs associated with it?
The typical costs?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, that varies from client to client, in as much as it would depend on which narrator was the match to that client, because narrators charge different rates. Mm-hmm. I've got narrators who charge anything from sort of $15, $20 per finished hour right up to, $150 to $200 per finished hour, right up to sort of $350, $400 per finished hour. So yeah, I mean, that would depend on the narrator, basically.
Who's doing the QA on that? Do you guys listen through it and go through and just make sure that, there aren't stumbles or something? I mean, I know that in the past I've listened to stuff that has been done through ATX, and the narrator would have, repeated a section or something like that, or there was something that they could cut. So do you guys do the QA?
Yeah, we do. I do all the quality control myself. As well as being a writer, I've sort of got a background in audio too. So some of the narrators, actually, having said that, some of the narrators do that themselves and just supply me with the finished audio. Others supply me with what's called punch and roll. So they've sort of left in the phrases they've had to repeat. There might be intakes of breath or coughs, that sort of stuff. And I would then go through the whole thing and obviously make sure that the audio is leveled out, the volume levels are sort of stable the whole way through. Things like coughs and splutters are taken out, repeated phrases are taken out. The quality control at the end of the day is down to me, even if a narrator had supplied what they considered to be finished audio. I would still go through the whole thing and make sure that it was 100% correct the whole way through.
Just how do you charge basically? So there's a like if I want a narrator, because you mentioned the per finished hour prices for the narrators, but obviously you have to eat. So is there like a production fee or something? What do the packages look like?
Well, again, there's no sort of set fee system in as much as like I said before, because the per finished hour rate varies from narrator to narrator. What I'm trying to do to get my cut of the pie, if you like, is to because I'm taking care of the editing process and taking that away from a lot of the narrators. So obviously I can add value there for myself. And the other way I'm trying to add value for myself is by sort of creating these book promotions that I was telling you about earlier. So as well as for the finished audio book, I would charge extra if you wanted it to be turned into a YouTube promotion, for example, or to a SoundCloud promotion.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about how those packages work? I mean, you mentioned that there's a SoundCloud. Are there like a defined package that one chapter plus this or something, and what's the sort of the price range for those?
Sure. Well, what I do with the SoundCloud and the YouTube promotions is basically I take the cover art of your book. That can be used to sort of create an icon, a backdrop for the promotion. I've got my own SoundCloud channel and my own YouTube channel so that they will get uploaded to those channels, and I provide you with the links so you can share them on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. At the moment, I'm actually running an offer on those. So if anybody's got a completed audiobook, they can send me the audio and I would take out a chapter and do that for them for $25 at the moment. But I personally, that's sort of the area I'm most interested in, particularly if a writer's interested in sort of creating the musical backdrop, that sort of stuff as well.
Because you have a little network of narrators here. Do they have any social reach? So that could be an interesting way for authors to get a little bit more out of the relationship. Is there because we have found that narrators do have listeners who just love the sound of their voice and will go to them over and over. So do you have do your narrators have any reach, so that's a little something extra that they can bring to the relationship?
That's not something I've looked into specifically, I must say, but that's a very interesting idea. So that is something I would query them on and find out about. So that's to go onto my to-do list now. But I mean, in the longer run, something I'm particularly keen to do is to create more of reach for my clients. And the way I want to do that is by creating genre-specific podcasts. So I'd have a romance podcast, for example, or a sci-fi podcast where the sample chapters would sort of form a weekly or bi-weekly show. So that hopefully with the podcast audience, that people would then hear these sample chapters, and that would be a way of them getting to know writers' work.
What was it? I had something that I was going to ask about here. So as far as promotion, like how are you seeing people use this? You mentioned the sending out to their list. We found getting carryover from like getting book readers to be interested in audio or vice versa. It's almost like we need to keep them separate. Have you heard anything from people who you've worked with as to how they're managing that or how well it's working for them?
The initial feedback I've had is good. I have to say it's fairly early days. I'm sort of at the stage where I've, up to this point, been mainly focused on just getting this stable of voice in place, building websites, etc. I am what you might call, I know when you were talking to Mark Dawson the other day, you mentioned that he never seemed to bootstrap things. I'm a bootstrapper, so I've had to do everything myself, and I've been building websites and sort of trying to build networks with narrators, etc., and having to do that with a very low budget.
Okay, well, I mean, what is it what are the big takeaways? Because I think everybody or most people listening to this are very familiar with bootstrapping. This is what we have to do. This is right. This is part of the game. But,
sure.
But what is it that, what are you seeing as the future of audio? What are your narrators telling you? What are your authors telling you? What is it that you can teach the audience? What is their big takeaway that when they're listening to this right now, this is what they're leaving with?
Okay, well, I would say that as an indie author, I wouldn't necessarily just think that you have to have a full audio book published, and that's the only way you can go with audio. I would say you need to try and think outside the box a little bit. You can have a section of your book narrated. You can give that away. You can look at sites like Bandcamp, where you can upload music or audio for free, and actually sell it through that platform as well. That's actually a site that's more, as its name suggests, Bandcamp is more aimed at musicians at the moment. But if you have a look at the site, there's actually a lot of audiobook chapters and that sort of stuff appearing on there now. DistroKid is a great distribution service where you can actually get sample chapters, or if you're into writing short fiction, poetry, flash fiction, that sort of stuff, you can actually get these things distributed on iTunes, on streaming services.
But then you don't get the exclusivity of Audible, right? So you really suffer in exposure and royalties.
This is true, but I guess I'd speaking from a personal point of view, as an indie writer, sometimes it's nice to maintain independence, and you can do things that run alongside Audible. You know, you could get your novel on Audible, but maybe think about doing something slightly different that you can then release in other formats and in different platforms.
Do you have any kind of guidance for authors when they come in? Because these are tough decisions, and audio is expensive, as we're talking about with per finished hour. So do you have guidance to, well, I hear what you're saying, because that's the rub, right? You're going to have to decide if somebody comes in and says, I want to order 1,000 hours of audio, right? Like that's great for you. They're going to get 1,000 hours of audio, but that could be suicide for their career. If they want to, I'm going to do it in poetry, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to like cut up little snippets, and I'm not going to go Audible. Like, these are all things that we've talked about in the last few minutes as options for authors, but a lot of them are actually terrible as far as what's going to mean something to an author career. So is there any kind of like counsel or guidance so that I'm an author, I'm coming to you and I'm like, Drew, I need help. Like, I really, really want to publish my book. It's called Access of Aaron. It's going to be about 15 hours worth of audio. It's probably going to feel 15 years for some people. We're wordy. It's 15 hours worth of audio. And we need the right narrator. And, it's not a serious book. It's not genre. So what do I do with that property?
Okay. Well, if you came to me with that proposition, I would make sure that first of all, I'd want to read the book myself. I would then want to have a discussion with you about what you were thinking of in terms of accents, in terms of characterization, really get that nailed down with you as the writer first. So I've got a very clear idea in my head of what it is you're looking for voice-wise. I could even send you samples of narrators that I think would match what you were doing. I would then be able to get hopefully one of those narrators, if they were available, to record a sample for you so that you can go away, listen to it, make sure it fits what you have in your head as the idea of what you want to produce before you commit to spending X amount of pounds, dollars on a full 15-hour length audiobook.
Are there specific genres that you feel do better than others, and are there some that should probably just avoid audio altogether?
Apparently, well, the latest sort of stats that are coming out on this suggests that the same sort of genres that are successful in the ebook market seem to be successful in the audiobook market. So, romance.
In other news, people who like lunch also like dinner.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah. The ones you'd expect really: so romance, fantasy, sci-fi, sort of thrillers.
Okay, when do you think it's the right time in an author's career to publish audio?
I think if you've just written your first book, probably not such a good idea at that point. Maybe, as discussed, it's quite an expensive process, or can be an expensive process. I would suggest at that point maybe consider having just a promotional chapter recorded, but not necessarily the whole thing. If you've got a back catalogue of books which you can monetize, then that makes more sense.
So if you have a finished funnel, that would be a good time.
That would be a good time, yeah.
And do you find that there's like a sweet spot for like length of audio that people are better off with?
So sorry, I missed that one.
Is there like a sweet spot you think for books like that authors maybe should go for like a certain length, or choose books that are of a certain length to record for audio as opposed to other lengths? Like, do you feel do better?
That's a good question. I would say I think the average length for audiobooks ran about 9 hours, but I think I don't think there is necessarily a sweet spot.
Okay, yeah. So the sweet spot is 10 plus hours on for audio. Because especially on Audible, it's a credit-driven system, and people want those 2 digits. So you exponentially are more likely to get downloaded with 10 hours or more, which equates to 90,000 plus words on your finished copy.
Right.
Okay.
Drew, do you offer like just service, like just like freelance production, basically? Because that's the part that was a big pain in the ass for me. Like, even if I were to go on and find my own narrator and handle all of that, and if I go through ACX and even royalty share, whatever, going through and listening to the book and making sure that the quality of the sound that they delivered was up to par, and that they hadn't, repeated things or so forth, like that is something that I, even under those circumstances, would love to outsource. Do you offer anything like that? Like they could just give you the audio?
So sorry, you're asking if what I'm offering sort of like a full service from you?
No, I'm wondering if you do offer that. If there's a scenario where not your current packages, what you've been talking about, I get all that. Like a separate service where I said, I just got all this audio recorded, but I don't want to go through and QA all of it. I don't want to master it and make sure that all the levels are right and that they, adding audio and or music and stuff. Is that the sort of thing that you would be willing to do that sort of thing as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's not a problem. Like I said earlier, as well as having a background in writing, I've got a background in working with audio as well. So I do all of that for the narration that comes through me anyway, from my narrators. So yeah, if somebody had raw audio and they just wanted to send that to me and I get it sorted out and I right through up to uploading it to ACX for them, I can do that for sure.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I loved when we were working with Podium as opposed to working with ACX was you didn't have to handle all that,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Now you were talking about doing stuff on YouTube. Is it just audio you're doing on YouTube, or are you also doing book trailers?
No, it's just audio at the moment. But book trailers is certainly something that I would look into maybe moving into in the future. Obviously, if people are creating book trailers, they need audio for the background anyway. So that's certainly something that I would be interested in helping with.
You mentioned in your email to us that you might have an offer for the audience. I don't want to put you on the spot or whatever, but that was one of the things that you mentioned. So I just wanted to get that as well. Is there a promotion of some sort that we can offer?
Sure. Yeah. Well, if any of the listeners out there for your guys' podcast would like to get in touch with me it's www.booknarrator.co.uk. If they send me email with Sterling and Stone in the subject line, I would be particularly interested in helping anybody who wants to promote a book, so would like a sample chapter narrated. At the moment, I'm offering a reduction on that. So yeah, certainly if they pop me an email, let me know that it's in connection with you guys, and I'll do my best for them.
Fantastic. So booknarrator.co.uk. Mention
That's
us.
the one.
Get the special secret discount. Drew, thanks so much for being on the Self-Publishing Podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Great to meet you. And everybody else, thanks for listening to the show, and we'll see y'all next time.
Okay. Cheers. Take care, guys. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.